unfortunate, foolish person, not knowing that he is engaged in his own self, laugh at him. Such foolish person is engaged in maintaining the body, which is eatable by dogs, with dresses, ornaments, garments, and ointments. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Lord Shiva never accepts any luxurious dress, garland, ornament, or ointment. Now, I'm just going to stop right there for a second. Prabhupada did not want his devotees to dress luxuriously and have, like, you know, perfumes or different types of ointments uh, uh, that would be, let's say, attractive. Like, when a woman puts on perfume, they can smell it, sometimes, uh, from far away. And when men use cologne and other things like that, they also can be, people can smell their odor from far away. So Lord Shiva never accepts any luxurious dress, garland, ornament, or ointment. But those who are addicted to the decoration of the body, which is finally eatable or edible by dogs, very luxuriously maintain it as the self. Now, is the self the body? No. Should we maintain the body? Yes, but not luxuriously with all kinds of different perfumes, ointments, and colognes, and things like that. We should avoid the luxurious dress and the different types of ornaments or ornaments or ointments. Okay. But those who are addicted to the decoration of the body, which is finally eatable or edible by dogs, very luxuriously maintain it as the self. But obviously, we are not the body. Such persons do not understand Lord Shiva, but they approach him for luxurious material comforts. There are two kinds of devotees of Lord Shiva. One class is the gross materialist seeking only bodily comforts from Lord Shiva. And the other class desires to become one with him. They are mostly impersonalists and prefer to chant Shivoham, I am Shiva, or after liberation, I shall become one with Lord Shiva. In other words, the karmis and jnanis are generally devotees of Lord Shiva, but they do not properly understand his real purpose in life. Sometimes so-called devotees of Lord Shiva imitate him in using poisonous and toxic. Lord Shiva once swallowed an ocean of poison, and thus his throat became blue. The imitation Shivas try to follow him by indulging in poisons, and thus they are ruined. The real purpose of Lord Shiva is to serve the soul of the soul, Lord Krishna. He desires that all luxurious articles, such as nice garments, garlands, ornaments, and cosmetics, be given to Lord Krishna only, because Krishna is the real enjoyer. He refuses to accept such luxurious items himself because they are only meant for Krishna. However, since they do not know this purpose of Lord Shiva, foolish persons either laugh at him or profitlessly try to imitate him. Well, the point is, in Krishna consciousness, we should have simple living, high thinking. That should be our motto. Simple living, high thinking. We should not be extravagant. We should not want to have a lot of, say, you know, perfumes and nice, really expensive clothes and really expensive cars and really expensive houses and all these things. We should live very simply as possible. It doesn't mean you have to sleep in a cardboard box outside somewhere, but we shouldn't go overboard in having luxurious lifestyle and luxurious things. We should try and have a very conservative, simple lifetime, and so that we have more time to focus our mind and our senses on pleasing Krishna. If we're too involved in pleasing ourselves, then we don't have much time to please Krishna. But if we're more interested in pleasing Krishna, then our life is much more simple and much more spiritually, let's say, potent. And one develops the clarity of the mind and senses to engage in preaching and Sankirtan and reading and hearing the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. If we get too involved in pampering the body and seeking to be, let's say, praised for having a lot of gadgets and cars, big expensive cars and big expensive houses, that is not necessary. It's better to live simple life, and have time for Krishna, have more time for Krishna consciousness. Simple living, high thinking. That is our motto. Okay, so here Prabhupada says in his purport that Lord Shiva has two kinds of devotees. One class is the gross materialist seeking only bodily comforts from Lord Shiva. And the other class desires to become one with him. They are mostly impersonalists and prefer to chant Shivoham, I am Shiva, or after liberation, I shall become one with Lord Shiva. In other words, the karmis and gyanis are generally devotees of Lord Shiva, but they do not properly understand his real purpose in life. What is his real purpose in life? What is Shiva's real purpose in life? It's to glorify Krishna. It's not for him to be glorified, but he himself wants to glorify Lord Krishna. And we should not imitate his sometimes devilish behaviors, because there's a purpose for that also. And that is to teach people what not to do. He's teaching both ways, what to do, what not to do. So, but because he is almost equal to Krishna, he has tremendous powers. So we should not try to emulate him or pretend to be like him or attempt to be like him. We should follow his example. He and his wife, Parvati, although they're so powerful, they live a very, very strict, simple life. They do not enjoy extravagant things. They don't have a house. Shiva doesn't give his wife a house. She doesn't complain. She's satisfied by following her husband and supporting him as much as possible in her acts of meditation and tapasya. So it's hard for people to understand this because they think, well, they worship Parvati for having wealth and very nice things and so forth. But she herself is very, very simple. She doesn't even have a house. But Shiva doesn't give his wife a house. But people don't really understand what the purpose is of Lord Shiva or Parvati. They think that, but they worship Parvati for material opulence, and they worship Lord Shiva also to have different types of opulence and sense gratification. All right, so in other words, the karmis and jnanis are generally devotees of Lord Shiva, but they do not properly understand his real purpose in life. Sometimes so-called devotees of Lord Shiva imitate him in using poisonous intoxicants like ganja and so forth, marijuana. Lord Shiva once swallowed an ocean of poison, and thus his throat became blue. The imitation Shivas try to follow him by indulging in poisons, and thus they are ruined. The real purpose of Lord Shiva is to, oh, by the way, when it says, and thus they are ruined, there's a very interesting point. There are a lot of people in the United States and all over the world who smoke marijuana. If you look up, you can look up on the internet right now. People who smoke marijuana, they claim that it doesn't affect them. They feel happy. They relax. This thing, that thing. But actually, there's a lot more information coming out that they become paranoid. It affects their ability to think clearly, and in many ways, it diminishes their ability to function at their optimal level of consciousness and intelligence. You see something about the effects of marijuana on people.
Yeah.
It's very interesting, because the people that smoke marijuana, they think, oh, well, since I've been smoking marijuana, I'm much more peaceful, and I have more clarity about what my purpose in life is, and all kinds of very nonsense things. But the reality is that it dulls the mind, and it's not good for your health. What's it say?
This is how pot, marijuana, affects your body
How marijuana affects your body. Okay, speak
mind and body. So marijuana, weed, pot, dope, grass, there are different names for the same drug that comes from the cannabis plant. You can smoke it, vape it, drink it, or eat it. Many people use marijuana for pleasure and to relax. But a growing number of doctors prescribe it for specific medical conditions and symptoms. Marijuana has mind-altering compounds that affect your brain and body. It can be addictive, and it may harm some people's health. Here is what happens when you use marijuana. Number one, you can get high. It is why most people try marijuana. The main psychoactive ingredients, THC, stimulates the part of your brain that responds to pleasure, like food and sex. That unleashes a chemical called dopamine, which gives you euphoric, relaxed feeling. If you vape or smoke weed, the THC could get into your bloodstream quick enough for you to get your high in seconds or minutes. The THC level usually peaks in about 30 minutes, and its effects may wear off in 1 to 3 hours. If you drink or eat pot, it may take many hours for you to fully sober up. You may not always know how potent your recreational marijuana might be. That also goes for most medical marijuana. Second, it may affect your mental health. Not everyone's experience with marijuana is pleasant. It often can leave you anxious, afraid, panicked, or paranoid. Using marijuana may raise your chances of clinical depression or worsen the symptoms of any mental disorders you already have. Scientists aren't sure exactly why. In high doses, it can cause psychosis, which makes you paranoid or causes you to lose understanding of what is real and what is not. So you hear or see things that are not there, and can have long lasting odd thoughts. Psychosis lessens as your high comes down. Increased risk of schizophrenia. Psychosis is a symptom of serious medical condition called schizophrenia. It affects the way you understand what is real, but includes other symptoms like trouble with speech, not being able to focus and show emotions. Also, schizophrenia, like psychosis, is long term. Recent research suggests that if you start to use marijuana at a young age, use it frequently and for a long period of time, you could be at the risk of having schizophrenia or other mental conditions that involve psychosis. This risk could be higher in young men and or people with associated assigned male at birth, especially those between 16 and 25 years. Studies also note that if you're at the risk of mental condition, you may be more likely to smoke more marijuana at an earlier age, maybe as a way to medicate yourself. Once you have schizophrenia, stopping marijuana use won't make the condition or its symptoms go away. If you think you are addicted to marijuana, getting an early diagnosis can help with treatment and prevent the risk of chronic conditions like schizophrenia. Next, your thinking may get distorted. Marijuana can cloud your senses and judgment. The effects can differ depending on things like how potent your marijuana was, how you took it, and how much marijuana you have used in the past. It might make your senses stronger, colors might seem brighter, and sounds might seem louder, twist your sense of time, hurt your motor skills or skills that involve muscles, completing certain actions, and make driving more dangerous. Lower your inhibitions so you may have unsafe sex or take other chances. Then you may get hooked. About 1 in 10 people who use marijuana will become addicted or have cannabis use disorder. This means you can't stop using it even if it harms your relationships, school, job, health, or finances. You have the CDC states that you have 10% risk of the disorder if you use marijuana.
Wonderful. Thank you.
It goes on and on.
Now we know what not to smoke. You shouldn't smoke anything, especially marijuana. You should just stay away from it. It's a very bad drug. Okay. So text 29. Demigods like Brahma also follow the religious rites observed by him, meaning Shiva. He is the controller of the material energy, which causes the creation of the material world. He is great, and therefore his devilish characteristics are simply imitation. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Lord Shiva is the husband of Durga, the controller of the material energy. Durga is personified material energy. And Lord Shiva, being her husband, is the controller of the material energy. He is also the incarnation of the mode of ignorance and one of the three deities representing the Supreme Lord. As his representative, Lord Shiva is identical with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is very great, and his renunciation of all material enjoyment is an ideal example of how one should be materially unattached. One should therefore follow in his footsteps and be unattached to matter, not imitate his uncommon acts like drinking poison. Very interesting report by Srila Prabhupada. So, there are two things we can learn from Lord Shiva. We can learn how to properly engage in respecting pure devotees, and we can also learn how to live a life of renunciation of all material enjoyment. So this Prabhupada says, and his renunciation of all material enjoyment is an ideal example of how one should be materially unattached. One should therefore follow in his footsteps and be unattached to matter, not imitate his uncommon acts like drinking poison. Well, his drinking of poison was to save the world from being destroyed. It was not to get high, like these so-called followers of Lord Shiva. They smoke marijuana and they think it's a blessing. There's this one person I knew. He dressed like Lord Shiva. He looked like Lord Shiva in some ways, and he would walk around with a tree stool. What is it?
Trident.
Trident, yeah. And it would scare people. If people would look at him, they'd be scared. And he would bless the marijuana if people wanted to smoke. They would go to him to please bless this. So he would, I don't know what he did, but he would do something and they would be very pleased. And then they would smoke happily their marijuana, and ruin their life. So it says here that there are three, let's see, Lord Shiva is also the incarnation of the mode of ignorance and one of the three deities representing the Supreme Lord. As his representative, Lord Shiva is identical with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, when it says as his representative, Lord Shiva is identical with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That means that he's living like the Lord by manifesting his renunciation. His opulence is the fact that he renounces sense gratification and so forth, and lives a very, very simple life. So Lord Shiva is identical with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Well, identical in what way? Well, he, first of all, he worships Krishna. He doesn't imitate Krishna. And he is also, let's say, engaged in activities of renunciation. And it's exemplary, let's put it like that. As his representative, Lord Shiva is identical with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is very great, and his renunciation of all material enjoyment is an ideal example of how one should be materially unattached. One should therefore follow in his footsteps and be unattached to matter, not imitate his uncommon acts like drinking poison. Okay, now let's talk about this for a second, like drinking poison. Most people think, oh, Lord Shiva smokes marijuana. No, he doesn't smoke marijuana. But he he swallowed the hala poison to save the world. There's a difference between smoking marijuana and saving the world by actually holding in his throat this hala poison that could destroy the world. So, therefore, Prabhupada says, one should therefore follow in his footsteps and be unattached to matter, not imitate his uncommon acts like drinking poison. Okay. So there's a reason why he holds this hala poison, and because it is a blue color in his neck, that was to save the universe, because it was capable of killing everyone. Just like today, there are atomic bombs, and there's all kinds of poisons. In World War One, there were the Allies and also the Germans were using poisonous weapons, and then all of a sudden, after the war, they said, well, no one's allowed to use these anymore. We have to all agree not to use these in war anymore. They still use it sometimes, but because it's very dangerous, I mean, bullets are all right, bombs are all right, but not poison. Right? So why don't you look that up? See what I'm saying is validated. That the use of poisonous, weapons are not permitted in warfare. It's considered a violation of the Geneva rules of regulations of combat.
Geneva Protocol.
Geneva Protocol, yes.
The 1950 Protocol for the prohibition of the use of asphyxiating, poisonous or other gases and of bacteriological methods of warfare, commonly known as the 1925 Geneva Protocol, bans the use of chemical and bacteriological weapons in war.
Very good. You see, because it's very dangerous. I mean, World War One, they were using these poisons in warfare, and it's horrible what it does to people. Well, I mean, bullets are horrible too, right? But the use of these poisons is very, very horrible, and of course, great suffering on the battlefield. So you have this what's called Geneva Protocol, where you're supposed to not be allowed to use these type of poisons in warfare. You can use bombs and bullets and things, blow up people, but you should not. You're not. It's like a violation of the treaty. What's the name of the treaty? The Geneva Protocol. The Geneva Protocol. Of course, all the time, in wartime, sometimes they don't follow these things. I mean, there's rules for everything, even for war. Okay, so we go on to text 30.
But nowadays, Maharaj, they are not even following any rules in war, like with Russia and Ukraine and Gaza. No rules.
Well, why? Because who's going to stop them? They think they can get away with it, but eventually it catches up. Usually, people who violate these treaties and different things about how you can do war and how you should not do war. After the war is over, after they've violated all the rules, then they get caught, and now they're prosecuted, put in a jail, or else they're hanged. So let's put it like this: crime doesn't pay. Everybody is going to get caught either by the authorities, or they're going to get caught by Yama. So one way or the other, they're going to suffer by violating the rules and regulations. Okay, so text 30. Maitreya said, Diti was thus informed by her husband, but she was pressed by Cupid for sexual satisfaction. She caught hold of the clothing of the great Brahmana sage, just like a shameless public prostitute. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The difference between a married wife and a public prostitute is that one is restrained in sex life by the rules and regulations of the scriptures, whereas the other is unrestricted in sex life and is conducted solely by the strong sex urge. Although very enlightened, Kasyapa, the great sage, became a victim of his prostitute wife. Such is the strong force of material energy. Well, that's a fact. Maya is very powerful. But in the case of Haridas Thakur, he did not succumb like Kasyapa Muni to the, let's say, powerful force of Maya. In fact, he conquered Maya. She became his devotee and started chanting Hare Krishna like him. If you read his history, he was tempted by a prostitute, and then later on, he was tempted, but by Maya herself. And in both cases, he turned a prostitute into a devotee, and he was able to inspire Maya to engage in chanting Hare Krishna and not try and, let's say, entice people to fall down to sense gratification. So it's very interesting. It says, she caught hold of the clothing of the great Brahmana sage, just like a shameless public prostitute. Well, I mean, I hope you don't go and see the behavior of shameless public prostitutes, but there are places all over the world where there are shameless public prostitutes trying to sell their body for sense gratification. And it's a horrible way of life. But you're going to be surprised. There were prostitutes in Krishna's time also. And in Krishna's, where he was living, they were part of the society. So there's a need for prostitutes also. So not that one should indulge in, let's say, frequenting the prostitutes, but even in Krishna's time, even in Dwarka, there were prostitutes, but the prostitutes were also devotees. Now, what was their purpose? Their purpose was to help control the behavior of the warriors so that they would not defile virgin girls. So these big time warriors, sometimes they like to have extra sex, and because of that, there were prostitutes even in Dwarka to control such men from defiling young girls. Okay, so you might say, "What? How's that possible? Why? How could there be prostitutes in Dwarka? Dwarka everyone should be a pure devotee." Well, the prostitutes were also devotees. It's not that they were like evil women; they were also devotees, but they they were doing something that was necessary to keep the balance of society. Okay, so we'll go to text 31. Understanding his wife's purpose, he was obliged to perform the forbidden act, and thus, after offering his obeisances to worshipable fate, he lay with his wife in a secluded place. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. It appears from the talks of Kashyapa and his wife that he was a worshipper of Lord Vishnu, Lord Shiva. And although he knew that Lord Shiva would not be pleased with him for such a forbidden act, he was obliged to act by his wife's desire. And thus he offered his obeisances unto fate, Fate. He knew that the child born of such untimely sexual intercourse would certainly not be a good child, but could not protect himself because he was too obligated to his wife. In a similar case, however, when Thakur Haridas was tempted by a public prostitute at the dead of night, he avoided the allurement because of his perfection in Krishna consciousness. Well, what is he talking about, perfection in Krishna consciousness? The fact that Haridas Thakur was chanting the holy name 300,000 times every day, which usually takes about almost 24 hours. Not quite, but almost. That is the difference between a Krishna conscious person and others. Kashyapa Muni was greatly learned and enlightened, and he knew all the rules and regulations of systematic life, yet he failed to protect himself from the attack of sexism. Dr. Haridasa was not born of a Brahmana family, nor was he himself Brahmana, yet he could protect himself from such an attack due to his being Krishna conscious. Thakur Haridas used to chant the holy name of the Lord 300,000 times daily. So this is interesting. Haridas Thakur was not a Brahmin. How could he be? He was born in a Muslim family. And but he could protect himself from such an attack due to his being Krishna conscious. That's a very significant statement. That's why we want to train kids to be Krishna conscious. Why? So they can protect themselves from the attack of sense gratification, and by being always Krishna conscious and not being enamored by the allurement of illicit sex and intoxication and so forth. So it's very important to learn to protect oneself from the attack of Maya. So Thakur Haridas was not born of a Brahmana family, nor was he himself Brahmana, yet he could protect himself from such an attack due to his being Krishna conscious. Haridas Thakur used to chant the holy name of the Lord 300,000 times daily. Now, this is a very important statement because everyone should know how to protect themselves, right? We can't expect to have, paid guards with us all the time. They have guns and they want to protect someone. But Thakur Haridas used to chant the holy name of the Lord 300,000 times, so he could protect himself from an attack of Maya due to his being Krishna conscious. So there's one thing to have a bodyguard with guns and so forth. It's another thing to be able to protect oneself from the attack of Maya due to being engaged in Krishna consciousness And the sign of being engaged in Krishna consciousness is chant the holy name of the Lord. We might not be able to do it 300,000 times daily like Harivilas, but at least we should chant 16 good rounds. That's a big difference between Harivilas Thakur and us. But living a Krishna conscious life, which means always associating with devotees and avoiding the association of non-devotees. That's how you can tell if someone is Krishna conscious. They avoid the association of non-devotees and they accept the association of devotees. Then it's possible to control the mind and the senses. But if you associate all the time with non-devotees, it's almost impossible to control the mind and the senses, and you probably succumb to engaging in illicit activities. Are there any questions about this? An interesting statement in this purport is that Kashyapa Muni, although he knew that Lord Shiva would not be pleased with him for such a forbidden act, he was obliged to act by his wife's desire, and thus he offered his obeisances unto fate, F-A-T-E.
Mhm.
So let's look up the meaning of fate. When a person says, well, this is my fate, but not faith, but fate, F-A-T.
The development of events beyond a person's control,
The development of events beyond a person's control.
regarded as determined by a supernatural power.
Determined by a supernatural power. So read that again.
The development of events beyond a person's control, regarded as determined by a supernatural power.
Okay, so if you, as it says here, that he see where he says that. Anyway, when you supplicate fate, that would be more in the sense of a Mayavadi. Like, for example, sometimes people who are atheists, they say, well, I was praying that when in this difficult situation, I was praying. Well, the question is, they're atheists, so who are they praying to? So they'll make up something like, well, I was praying to fate, or I was praying to this, or I was praying to that. But they say I was praying. Just like when a long time ago, these astronauts, were in a rocket, and there was a situation where they might die. So I think the president of the United States said, we should pray for them. In other words, when there's a big problem and it doesn't look like anyone can do anything about it, then people resort to praying. Now, who do you pray to? Especially if you're a non-believer, an atheist, who do you pray to? Well, we should pray to Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But, how can a person pray to Krishna when they don't believe Krishna is God? But whenever there's some really big tragedy, they always say, well, we're praying for their welfare, or we're praying for them. And these are people like politicians who are not really devotees at all, but they're telling other people we should pray. in this dire situation. So that means that they know what the right thing is, but only in very dire situations will they think about doing the right thing. But the rest of the time, they're always doing the wrong thing. Because when you see the power of God, like for example, just a day or two ago, there was these terrible tornadoes that killed people. Right? You see the power of a tornado; it's overwhelming. I mean, the United States Army cannot stop a tornado. It's the strongest army in the world. They can't. They're helpless when the tornado comes, and all they can do is try and protect themselves. They can't like throw an atomic bomb on it and stop it. It doesn't work. So, well, it might work, but that would cause even more problems. So we see there are invincible forces in nature. What does it mean? That means that we cannot overcome the power of Krishna. That's what it means. Those invincible forces of nature are beyond the control of even the strongest armies in the world, and because it's the power of God, it's not the power of human beings. So all they can do is just try and protect themselves as much as they can and wait until the hurricane stops. And really bad hurricanes, it's impossible to stop it. So there are forces in nature that are impossible to stop. They cannot be controlled because the power that Krishna exerts is uncontrollable. So we have to see now in like the Native Americans, whenever they would see something or some creature demonstrate what you might consider invincible power, they would worship it. So that's why American Indians sometimes would worship eagles and other types of very powerful animals, or they would worship anything that seemed to have, supernatural power to it. And it seems to be normal because when you see something that is impossible to control, then you want to, it makes you feel a little bit, well, it makes you feel very insecure. And so sometimes you end up trying to pray to that thing that's so invincible, so powerful. Okay. Therefore, text 32. Thereafter, the Brahmana took his bath in the water and controlled his speech by practicing trance, meditating on the eternal effulgence and chanting the holy Gayatri hymns within his mouth. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. As one has to take bath after using the toilet, so one has to wash himself with water after sexual intercourse, especially when in a forbidden time. Kashyapa Muni meditated on the impersonal Brahmajyoti by chanting the Gayatri mantra within his mouth. When a Vedic mantra is chanted within the mouth so that only the chanter can hear, the chanting is called japa. But when such mantras are chanted loudly, it is called kirtan. The Vedic hymn, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare,
can be chanted both softly to oneself or loudly. Therefore, it is called Mahamantra, or the great hymn. Kashyapa Muni appears to be an impersonalist. Comparing his character with that of Thakur Haridasa, as referred to above, it is clear that the personalist is stronger in sense control than the impersonalist. This is explained in Bhagavad Gita as param dristva nivartate. That is, one ceases to accept lower grade things when one is situated in a superior condition. One is supposed to be purified after taking bath and chanting Gayatri. But the Mahamantra is so powerful that one can chant loudly or softly in any condition, and he is protected from all the evils of material existence. So it's a very significant statement being here. And Prabhupada mentions param dristva nivartate. That is, one ceases to accept lower grade things when one is situated in a superior condition. In other words, the person gives up lower things when they have something that is better. So, what is better? It's better to not engage in sense gratification, but engage in pleasing the senses of Krishna. Sense gratification is still there, but instead of selfish sense gratification, one pleases the senses of Krishna, and Krishna is kind person. He gives the devotees prasadam. Now, prasadam is a supernatural product. It's not mundane. It looks like it's mundane, and it's maybe starts like it's mundane, but then it's transformed into something supernatural or spiritual. And so when we receive prasadam, we become protected from Maya by taking prasadam, and especially in the association of devotees. So here, when someone makes a mistake, they have to atone for it. So the atonement is to chant Hare Krishna and eat only prasadam and associate with devotees. It's not, well, amongst the Catholics, what is atonement? Well, you go to it's called you go to a Catholic church, and in that church they have these little, not a room, but well, something like a very tight small room where there's a priest on one side and there's some kind of a separation, and there's a person who wants to explain the sins that they've committed, and then they receive a suggestion or things that they can do to atone for those sins. And then the person confesses first their sins, and then the priest gives them something to do to make up for those sins. So there's usually, you have to pray, so many prayers every day, and then so it's recommended for Catholics to come and declare their sins and get some temporary, what we call it temporary dispensation or temporary, let's say, relief from those sins. But it does not stop the desire for sin. That's the problem. So why don't you look that up? It's called confession. Confession to a Catholic priest. So devotees, when they commit, let's say sinful activity, they can let's say that they can atone for that sinful activity by continuing to engage in devotional service in the association of good devotees. And there's a possibility of param dristva nivartate, getting a higher taste. So when you get a higher taste, you leave the lower taste. What does it say about confession?
Confession, it's an acknowledgement of sinfulness in a public or private setup regarded as necessary to obtain divine forgiveness.
Very good. So, but the problem is in Catholic confessions, it's a good thing to confess your sins, but that does not necessarily stop you from desiring to sin. Let's put it like that. So there are some people that regularly sin and then come and confess, and they go out and feel relief that they confessed their sins and were got some blessing, and they feel good about it. And then they come back the next week with a new level of sins that they committed, and ask again to be, relieved from those sins. So there's a difference between confessing your sins and losing the desire to sin. You can confess your sins 10,000 times, but you haven't stopped desiring to sin. So in Krishna consciousness, param dristva nivartate, one ceases to accept lower grade things when one is situated in a superior condition. One is supposed to be purified after taking bath and chanting Gayatri, but the Mahamantra, Hare Krishna, is so powerful that one can chant loudly or softly in any condition, and he or she is protected from all the evils of material existence. So that's why in Kali Yuga, the age in which we are in now, the chanting of Hare Krishna, especially loudly chanting Hare Krishna, is highly recommended if you want to be protected. Let's say you want to be purified and then also protected from engaging in any more sinful activity. Now, for that purification to take place successfully, you have to not only chant the holy name, but it should be in the association of holy people or devotees. Then the miracle happens. If you do it privately, chant privately, there's a good chance that you're not going to succeed. But if you're always in the association of devotees, there's a very great chance that you will succeed in controlling mundane desires and desire for illicit activities, and give them up eventually and live a very saintly life. And that's what we want. We want people that have a saintly life, starting even from childhood and throughout the whole life. And that's by associating with genuine devotees, even from the earliest time, and never leaving that association. So we see oftentimes there are young kids in the temple and they're chanting Hare Krishna, they're jumping up and down in the kirtan, they're happy. They enjoy Shadam, they enjoy Sankirtan and so forth. Then they get older, they get to be teenagers, and they go to schools, the demon schools, and eventually their enthusiasm that they had before when they were like 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, begins to get tempered or begins to decrease. Not everyone, but a lot of people, a lot of young kids. And they can go through a whole period of 10, 20 years where their enthusiasm is not very strong for being Krishna conscious. And then something happens because they were Krishna conscious once in their younger time. And usually it's because of difficulties that they're having in life. And all of a sudden they take an interest in Krishna consciousness again. Because they had that training when they were younger. Then they got poisoned by going to school. And then different things happened. And they realized that, they actually need the protection of Krishna and the devotees, and they come back. So it is very important for kids to grow up in a Krishna conscious, genuine Krishna conscious atmosphere and association. Because even if they stop following Krishna consciousness, there's a good chance they're going to come back later on, once they get worked over by Maya. Now, see, Maya is on our side. Let's put it like that. Maya is on our side.
Yeah.
Because she's punishing people. But how does she do that? First, she gives people success. And then she either slowly or abruptly takes it away from them. So when she does it abruptly, people are really shocked and stunned. When she does it slowly, people are in terrible anxiety because they see everything, all the sense gratification that they develop now, they're losing it one by one, slowly away, and makes them crazy. People go crazy when they see, their wealth going away slowly. It can also go away immediately and they're devastated. Or if it goes away slowly, it drives them crazy. They can commit suicide because they don't know anything more than making money. They have no relationship with Krishna. So, or they do what's called, they will commit suicide. Well, they will first kill their family members and then commit suicide. You read about it almost every week. It happens in the United States. Someone goes nuts and he kills his wife and kids, and then he kills himself. Now, what did the kids and the wife do that was wrong? There was nothing. Why is he doing that? It'd be good to ask one of these people that has done that, why they did it. They probably don't know why. They're just so frustrated. Well, they'll probably have some reasoning for it. But we should first of all, realize that without Krishna consciousness, it's possible to do crazy things like that. Because we're lacking a relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and we don't have good association. So the first thing is to have good association. Then one will chant and continue chanting and not stop. And one will engage in devotional activities, and one will gradually disassociate themselves from associating with unholy people. All of that is very important to have sustained Krishna consciousness.
Right. Time check.
Okay, so thank you very much. If there's any questions, we can answer them. Otherwise, chant Hare Krishna and be happy.
Hare Krishna, any questions online? If there are no questions, we'll see tomorrow. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram,
Hare Ram.
Ram Ram, Hare Hare.